Yeah, hi Pete. So it's Terse back on the old squat box once again, and I'm here to talk about a government policy which has come into force, I think, about a year ago, sometime in the last 6 to 12 months it came into force, where what they're doing is they have reduced the amount of benefits people in Britain can get if they're unemployed or unemployed on benefits, or part-time workers and on benefits. For instance, if you're totally unemployed and on benefits, for a single person they've put a cap on benefits to £300, £350 a week. I think that's rather high. I mean, I'm a single person, I get £100 a week, but I suppose if you're living in London and you're, rather than renting from the council, you're renting from a private house renter, you can claim whatever rent that house renter is asking, and you go to the Social Security and they give you housing benefit. Now, if you're renting from the council, well, the council used to own hundreds of thousands of homes in all the places in Britain, all counties in Britain, all districts in Britain. They used to have hundreds of thousands of homes, they used to own them, and then Margaret Thatcher came in and says, we're going to allow you to buy your home. And people bought their council house, basically. They bought their council house, and then what they did was they stayed in that house for 2 years, and then when the price of the house went up during the bubble, during that big bubble when houses were just, you could buy a house and a year later you could sell it for 2 or 3 times as much, I mean, that's how bad it was in some places, and yeah, so people bought their council houses and then they sold them on to speculators, or they sold them on to agencies who bought houses to rent. That was the way it was. So you lived in a council house for 5-10 years, you buy it off them because Thatcher says you can. Some people, places, you're allowed to be in a house for 12 to 24 months, and then you could buy the house. Banks, you buy a house in a nice area, you wait a year or so in that house, and then you sell it. You've got like a total 100% mortgage, you've only paid 2 years of payments on it over a 20-year period. Then you sell it to someone for twice the price that you expect to pay for it. You pay off your mortgage, you've got enough money then to move somewhere else and buy a cheaper home to move into, and probably still some money left over, and you actually own the house. You're not paying money for the next 18 years, you actually own that house now, and you've got money left over. People did that all over the country because of Thatcher, But Thatcher says to the council, when you sell that house, you're not allowed to use that money to build another council house. Which was crazy. I mean, the council own 100,000 homes. They have to sell maybe 40% of them to people who want to buy them, because a lot of people didn't want to buy. They were quite happy renting because they were in low-paid jobs and didn't want to take on a mortgage. They'd never been involved in really large financial transactions like that. They were happy just to rent. So a lot of people didn't buy their council houses. What I mean? But some did, and that the speculation market and the bubble was going on. The housing bubble was going on at the time, and that's why people could, after buying a house, within a year, 2 years, they could sell it for double the price that their mortgage was. What I mean? So the council couldn't use the money from the sale of the house, to build new council housing. So that the pool of council houses went down and down and down and down. And the amount of houses that people owned personally went down as well, because they sold them on to agencies who wanted to have 3,000 homes in a certain area that they would rent to other people, because they knew that they could get large fees from the social benefits agencies. They put someone who's on social benefits into their house they bought that used to be owned by the council, they could now rent it to someone who's on social security and charge the council rent benefit money for that family to be there, because they knew that the law hadn't been changed that said that the council didn't have to house you. That was the law. The law was when you turned up without a house in an area, the council had to house you. They would temporarily house you in bed and breakfasts, which was a pain in the ass, and they get a lot of shit for that, because you're only in there, maybe you've got a family of 3, you're unemployed, you and your husband have to leave the bed and breakfast by 12 o'clock, 12 p.m, 12 a.m, 11, 12 a.m, and then you can come back in at 5 or 6. So although you're renting that room, you can only be there certain hours because they need to clean up and tidy and all that shit, right? So you're out and in, you're out and in, you're out and in. So you've got to pack everything, take it out, take it back in, unpack it, every fucking night, you know what I mean? People hated that shit, And a lot of speculators understood this, so they bought a lot of these, previously owned by the council houses. They bought them up and then rented them to people who were unemployed full time. They didn't have to move in and out their house, but they put the rent price up by 100%. So the council used to own that house. You used to pay £60 a week for a 3-bedroom house, £80 a week for a 3-bedroom house. As soon as you sold that, bought that house and then sold it to a housing rental agency, they then charged the council £200 a week, for that house. And the council, because they needed to find places to put these people who were in, bed and breakfasts, and they rented it. They said, okay, we'll pay that rent. And so rent went up and up and up, and you've got a rent bubble. The government have decided now, this Cameron government, they've decided now to put a cap on that. They've got a benefits cap. So now that a single person can have a benefits cap of £300 to £350, a family benefits cap of £500 a week. So now you can find yourself renting a house, a 3-bedroom house. You get yourself, your wife, and 2 kids. Bang, they've put a cap on it, £500. Now that's not going to just be your rent. That's going to be your rent. It's going to be your council tax. It's going to be your unemployment benefit. It's going to be all that. You know what I mean? But £500 a week, for a family of 3, you could probably live on that fine if you're not paying half of it in rent. But the thing is, you are paying half of it in rent. And then they're taking another £60 off you a month, £70 off you a month, £90 off you a month in council tax. So now you're down to living on £200 a month. So you've got 4 people living on £200 a month. That's £50 a week for your food, your electricity, your gas, your TV bill, your phone bill, transport to work. These people are living in poverty. But the people who have bought those used to be council houses where the rent was a quarter what it is now, you know what I mean? And okay, it might have went up by say 10% over the last sort of 4 or 5 or 6 years or 10 years, depending on what area you live in. London always went up faster because it's a major city, but there's still places where, for instance, I only pay £90 a week rent for my house, and that's split between me and my parents. I pay half of it, I get half of that in benefit, and they pay the other half between them. So, I'm only paying £45, but £45 a week for a 4-bedroom house, right? That's in Glasgow, well, it's in Renfrew, That seems reasonable because it's a council house, and that's the sort of fee that people should be paying in London. £90 a week for a 4-bedroom house. Maybe 110, 120, I could see that because it's London, But why are they paying £250? Only because these speculators bought the house off of people who Thatcher allowed to buy the houses, and then they put the rent up, and they put the rent up, and they put the rent up. So you can see why Cameron thought, well, it's shooting through the roof. roof. But why are they moving people saying, well, we've capped your benefit, you can't afford to live here in London anymore, so now we're going to move you to Manchester or Birmingham, where we're moving a council house in Birmingham, or we're moving a private house in Birmingham, but it's going to be half the price it is in London, and you're taking the 2 or 3 kids out of school in London, where they've been at school for a couple of years, you know what I mean, and you're moving it to a place where they don't know anybody. You're moving the mother and father to a place where they've got no friends or relatives or anything like that living near them, so they've got no support, they don't have any community connections, so they're moving into a new area where it's just like having, up to move to a new country basically, and they haven't tackled the idea of saying to the people who rent the houses, well, if you don't rent this house to someone on the Social Security, then you wouldn't be renting it. So what I would do if I was a government would be say, if you're renting to the council, we're going to cut you what we expect you to ask us as rent in half. Instead of $250, we're going to pay you $125 a week. Now, if you can find someone who's got a job, who's not on Social Security and can afford to pay $250 for that house, you can give that family a month's notice, they will have to move out, and you can put that family in there who will pay you $250. But if it's a Social Security benefits recipient, the price is $125. Otherwise, get out of the market. It's a fucking free market, isn't it? It's a free market, and this is what the government says it's willing to pay. $125 for that house. I don't see why the government couldn't have went down that road, rather than moving thousands of families out and shifting them all over the fucking country. I don't understand that. The government could have took a direct route to target the problem. People who speculated on these buildings in order to make a profit off of the country, soaking up taxpayers' fucking money to make themselves rich. They could have bought that house and says, well, we're not willing to take Social Security benefit. We're only willing to rent it to people who have a job. That's their prerogative. But no, they did it knowing that the council had to fucking house these people and then put the rent up and the rent up and rent up in order to soak money out of the fucking country, out of the tax benefits, you know what I mean? So as far as I'm concerned, the government have taken a total wrong tact here. They should actually set a finite limit on what they will pay as rent to these people, and say, if you're not willing to accept that as a rent for that property, then don't accept people who are on Social Security. There are places where you will go and they will say, we don't accept Social Security. I've tried to rent houses when I was unemployed, and they say, well, you're unemployed? We don't accept Social Security benefit payers. We only accept people who are working and can pay rent, from the background. So, I understand that it's not illegal to do that, but these people who say, oh, let's just put our rent up, every year it goes up by 10-15%, every year it goes up, every year it goes up, and the Social Security is just expected to just keep paying taxpayers' money to those people. That's why they bought the houses, you know what I mean? Because they knew they were going to make it back. They knew that within fucking 10 years, the house that they paid double for was paid for, and now they owned it now, and they were still soaking double the money out of the taxpayers' fucking pockets to house people there through the councils, The council should never have sold those houses. Thatcher had the wrong fucking idea. If she wanted more housing, she should have paid to build it. If she wanted more people to own their houses, she should have incentivised builders to build more housing. She shouldn't have sold off the stock that we know that we need as a social fucking people in Britain to house those who can't afford to be housed. We don't want families living in tents and on the street in Britain. We just don't. We can't allow it. That's why we pay for bed and breakfast. They're not on the street, they're in houses at night, but they're on the street during the day when the house, the bed and breakfast needs to be cleaned up and shit, So they should target the owners of these properties and say, this is a cap on what the Social Security benefit will pay in housing, rather than saying cap the fucking benefit receivers and kick them out of the house and move them to a new city where they have no contacts and no infrastructure, no way of getting a job, and no way of actually, understanding what the fuck's going on in their lives. The government has just moved in and says, you got to leave your house, got to get on a train and move to another city. Fucktarded, man. Totally fucktarded. Slán you fucking far.